Josh, hello.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Welcome to the Tower of London.
Yes, I've never been here before.
Yeah, it's kind of imposing, isn't it?
It sure is.
It's almost 1,000 years old, and it was built as a royal fortress and a palace, and it also became a prison.
I understand that you can tell me a little bit more about Thomas Norton, my 12 times great-grandfather, and his examination of some of these prisoners.
That's right, he was quite busy here in the time of Elizabeth I, and I've got a few things I want to show you. We need to go past the Bloody Tower here and onto the Wakefield Tower, so let's go.
All right.
Can you imagine being a prisoner here? It would not have been nice.
I would have been terrified. I was a little scared walking in here by myself.
So this is an engraving put out by Catholics in Europe, and the purpose was to show the world what was happening in England. So if I could just direct you to the text here, it's in Latin. You can make out what it says.
Tormenta, something inflict, torment, torture. Talk to me.
It's Latin, the language of Catholic Europe. It means tortures inflicted in prison.
Talk to me.
It means tortures inflicted in prison. Not only were Catholics being persecuted, but they were also, at the most extreme level, being physically persecuted. They were being tortured. This is another illustration that might show more clearly how it worked. You will see a man on a contraption known as the rack. It's also right in front of you as a replica. The prisoner's wrists would be tied to the top, his ankles would be secured at the bottom, and then the ratchet would be pulled and his body would be stretched, often until his limbs were dislocated.
Oh my God. So they would pull the arms off or just dislocate?
Usually they would just dislocate. Sometimes they would pull from their sockets. Often it was just enough to threaten the rack or to show them the rack.
And the idea was just to get them to talk?
Yes.
To talk about any plans for assassinating the Queen?
Exactly right.
So Thomas Norton, would he have been the one torturing the prisoners?
He wouldn't have pulled the ratchet himself, but he would have been in the room, overseeing the entire interrogation. So he may not have handled the rack, but you might think there is blood on his hands.
It's barbaric.
So if I could just direct you to the text here, if you can make out what it says near B.
Nortonus, I'm guessing that's Norton. So do we know how old he would have been at this point?
He would have been around 50.
Archicarnifex? What is that?
It basically means the arch butcher, the chief executioner. So for the Catholics in Europe, Norton was the arch villain. He was also known as Rackmaster Norton.
What? This is not what I was expecting to hear.
No.
Well, the American Protective League was a national organization, right? And it was set up right at the beginning of the First World War. And it's a voluntary organization founded right here in Chicago, right? And Charles Daniel Fry, your great-grandfather, was involved in it from the very beginning.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
It's April 1917. The United States has just entered the First World War. It's a very controversial decision to enter the war at all. And you've just had episodes of violence, of sabotage and espionage from German spies.
In the U.S.?
In the U.S. So a lot of Americans are afraid.
Okay.
The American Protective League investigated people for all kinds of stuff, but they particularly focused on German citizens who were in the United States. And those were termed enemy aliens, right? Because they're citizens of the country we're at war.
So horrible. Okay, yeah.
And under the terms of law, they had to register as enemy aliens.
Charles Daniel Fry was German.
Yes.
Well, I mean, he was second generation, but he was German.
Yes. But remember, all Germans are under suspicion during the war, right? Even someone as assimilated as American as your great-grandfather.
So he might have had a vested interest in joining up early?
It certainly would have helped. It definitely, makes him look like he's 100% American and part of the war.
So this gave you sort of an extra opportunity to get a gold star by your name for being American and not German.
Yeah.
Considered enemies in our midst, Germans living in the U.S. during World War I were watched closely and told where they could and couldn't live or work. The American Protective League often joined with local police to keep tabs on anyone suspected of having strong German ties. During Charles Fry's tenure, the APL rounded up several thousand Germans who were sent to detention camps. Many were not released until after the war.
Sometimes the APL was acting without warrants, doing things that we would now understand as unconstitutional. They're sort of able to tap into people's phones. They're getting information from banks about people's bank accounts and their spending.
Wow.
Yes.
So the American Protective League, this is sort of a citizens' army of surveillance.
Exactly. And the Chicago chapter was the biggest chapter of the American Protective League. And it's a soapbox for Charles Daniel Fry's patriotism. It's also a way for him to bring some of his skills in advertising to the service of the war effort.
How are those skills now? By selling the domestic fear?
I think to a large extent. So what an advertising executive can do if they're very well connected is get the news out about the American Protective League.
I mean, I'm all for patriotism, but this sounds like a bit of a mob mentality, and it's a little frightening to me.
It's definitely one of the darker chapters of American history. The American Protective League generated documents that have been in collections all around the country, right? And I've managed to identify a few of the others that I want you to take a look
Okay.
at.
The American Protective League National Headquarters.
This is Big Charlie.
Oh my God, it is?
Yes.
God. He doesn't look anything like the other pictures I've seen of him, but my grandfather looked exactly like that. Exactly, his son, Charlie Jr. Wow. He looks like a real jerk. He's in military garb,
Yes.
but he wasn't in the military.
Well, there's another document that I found that I think will shed some light on that.
Okay.
Let's take a look.
Okay. American Protective League, March 22nd, 1918.
A long time.
Oh, Captain Charles Daniel Fry. My dear Captain, but he wasn't in the military.
He does have a military rank through his service in the American Protective League.
Ugh. I congratulate you on the excellent work you are now doing in helping to bring all other divisions of the League up to the standard of the Chicago division, as well as the other and even more important work you are now so efficiently handling as national director. He becomes national director of the APL.
Yes.
One other way of documenting your great-great-great-grandfather's interests in this is by looking at the census records. Take a look, and you can kind of see at the top what we're dealing with here.
This census was taken in 1860. John Batts was 45 years old. He was a planter, and his value of real estate was $17,500. And his value of personal estate is $32,000.
Exactly.
Which is, it's a lot of money back then.
It's hard to factor up. People always say, what would this be in modern terms? But it could be close to $1 million.
Wow.
The main source of wealth for a Southern planter, when you see a figure like that, it's going to be in people.
Oh.
And so let me show you this document here and see what it's called right up front.
Slave inhabitants. John Batts. $35. was a lot. I have said so many times, well, my family was never involved in slavery in any way. It's horrific and it's sad.
It's the hard reality of the Old South.
It was a shock for me to find out my 3 times great-grandfather owning a living human being. I've got to absorb everything that was told to me today. I almost feel like somebody took a bucket of cold water and threw it in my face.
So this is everything that they would have taken on their journey to Sydney?
Yes.
6 shifts, 6 pairs of stockings, 2 pairs of shoes, 2 gowns, 2 aprons, 1 bonnet. I actually saw some of this when I was in Sydney.
Okay.
Yes, I saw a pair of stockings, we saw a bonnet. Just unbelievable. It's so crazy to see it now.
This is where it started.
Yeah, the laundry list of items that they were given.
I mean, for people who had been here and had nothing, and suddenly this is, you know, what you're presented with. I mean, for Ellen and Mary, they must have thought, whoa, this is all our Christmases coming at once.
Yeah, absolutely.
They needed those women to be arriving into Australia looking good.
Looking the part.
Good quality girls.
Yeah, to a country they probably know nothing about.
Very little.
And what an intimidating journey, too. Wow. So, my 4 times great-grandparents, Mary and James, we know James went to America and he's virtually untrackable, but were you able to find anything about Mary Flynn?
I was.
You were? Wow.
Here.
What is this? Wow. Good gracious. Record of deaths, Cashel Workhouse in the main house. Wow. Good gracious. Let's see if I can find Flynn. Mary Flynn. 40. So young. Wow. It looks like it was April 14th. Is that what that looks like?
Yeah.
April 14th of 1848.
The likely cause of death is going to be maybe famine, fever, typhoid.
Just a condition of living in a workhouse.
Conditions of living here. You can see a number of others died that same day.
Oh my goodness, yeah. When Mary and Ellen were recruited to be a part of the Earl Grey scheme, their mother had already passed away, so it does, give me a bit of solace to know that, they weren't saying goodbye to their mother to never see her again.
There's solace in that.
Yeah. But to know that my 4 times great-grandmother passed away in a place just like this and the sort of horrific conditions that you described is really, it's just very tragic.
While Erica looks through further court records, I'm gonna meet with historian Sheena Harris. I'm hoping she can tell me what happened to Moses after he appeared on the blacklist here.
I was able to do some research in federal documents, and I found something with your great-great-grandfather's name on it that I want you to take a look at.
Oh, wow. So, the sub-district of Tuscaloosa, September 14th, 1868. The last document that I read yesterday was dated September 8th, which was 6 days before this.
Right. This is a federal document from the Freedmen's Bureau.
Right.
So the Freedmen's Bureau is an organization that's formed at the wake of the Civil War to help freedmen and women during their time in transitioning after slavery. The federal government is doing investigation during this time period of Klan activity. The Klan is in fear, because here you have, they've lost the war. Many of these white men are disenfranchised now. They don't have the vote. And you have blacks who are now joining with the Union League, and having this political voice.
Sir, I have the honor to report the disagreeable fact that there has been 2 horrible murders committed in this county during the past week. On Friday night, the 10th, a gang of men disguised went to the house of a freedman in Norport by the name of Moses Hughes, broke open his house and hunted for him, and not finding him, inquired which was his wife, then went to the bed where she lay and deliberately shot her through the brain. Deliberately shot her through the brain and left her dead. Okay, let me stop. Shot whose wife?
Right, so now we're finding that the Klan have gone to the house of your great-great-grandfather. And while going into that house, they were looking for him or in
And they
search of
shot
him.
his wife.
And they shot his wife, who was still laying in the bed.
Whew. It's amazing that you can still, 150 plus years later, still have anger about something, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Hughes saved his life for the time being by getting up the chimney, so they did not find him. So he got away by hiding in the chimney.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's very plausible that he knew that he was blacklisted. And so your great-great-grandfather and his wife may have known that the Klan were going to come to find him out. This was a very common thing for the woman to stay down and for the man to sort of hide in that way until the scene cleared its way. And one thing you do find is that most of the women are not murdered. And so the fact that she is murdered can mean a number of different things. One of them primarily is that the Klan could use it as a way of trying to get your great-great-grandfather to come out of hiding. It does speak volumes to the amount of terror or fear that they're attempting to place in either your great-great-grandfather and also other locals.
When I found out that Moses was about 50 years old when he had the eldest of my great-grandmother's siblings, I was like, oh, maybe he, changed his name because he wanted to protect his family before. And then to find this out is kind of, sad.
I come back to you because I guess I'm curious as to what happened to the descendants of Shlomo's brothers, Isaac, Yankel, Abraham.
Well, Shlomo's brothers had families, and you can see them here on the tree. I can show you also passports.
Wow. Rita tells me that shortly after Latvia gained its independence in 1918, all citizens over the age of 16 were required to have a passport, even to travel town to town. Rita found passports for several members of Shlomo's family, my distant cousins.
This is Abraham David. He went 39 to Paris to visit family, to rest, etc. And her mother, she had to write an application and ask for a visa for her son because she wanted him to come back.
From Paris?
From Paris, probably because the war was started and she was afraid, she was worried. This is Jetta Benson.
And that's Yankel's granddaughter? So great, I love that picture.
Yeah, it's a very nice picture.
In addition to passports, Rita has housing records that show my family relocated from Aizpurta to Riga well before World War II, which means they were gone before the Jewish population there was murdered. But what was their fate in Riga?
But here you can see the date where they were all struck off.
So when it says that they're struck off the register, what does that mean?
It means that they were forced to move to the ghetto suburb and ended up in Rumbula.
In July of 1941, Nazi troops took over Latvia, murdering 400 Jews in Riga and destroying every synagogue. In September and October, the Nazis rounded up the remaining Jews from across the city and moved them to the Riga ghetto, an old part of the city they turned into a prison camp. In two actions, one on November 30th and one on December 8th, 1941, more than 25,000 Latvian Jews and 1,000 German Jews were taken to the Rumbula forest 6 miles away.
Tell me about Rumbula.
It is a small place. It was a forest near to the railway station. And all people from the ghetto were asked to put their belongings. They driven out and they were told that they were just to move to another place. They had to walk until the place where the graves were dug. And they were forced to undress and just to go into the graves, and they were just shot there. These branches just ended with the war.
He's so handsome, he's so young. So Shlama's family made it?
Because they left.
My family members were probably brought to the Rumbula forest.
Right.
And is there anything there now?
Yeah, now there is a very large memorial. There is a big menorah and memorial stones with names of people perished there.
It's heavy and it's a lot, but these are things that I wanted to know. I wanted to really have some closure about, you know, what happened with our family. And I do, and I'm still processing it in a major way, and I also have to tell my mom, which is like it's a big deal.